This is Algebra 1, Term 3, Lesson 2. We're going to be looking at two variable inequalities in this lesson. But first, we're going to do an estimation task using cheese balls and a variety of concepts. Then our Desmos classroom activity, which kind of lays the foundation for this lesson. And then how much soda is a 3-act task. You may wait and do it after the GeoGebra. I kind of switched the order on that, or you could do it before, so we'll talk about it when we get there. And then GeoGebra is some basic skill practice. So let's start with our cheese balls activity. Now this first picture here comes from estimation180.com, and there were some teacher notes and things that went along with this, but for whatever reason those have been taken down. So what I have done is I have created several different things that can be done with this graphic, and use these as you will, and I have also recreated the graphic at the site for this picture that I'm going to show you in a minute. I will link to these graphics in your show notes so that you'll be able to use those to do this task with your students. Now this is the Estimation 180 site. This teacher resources page does not really lead to anything for this particular lesson, so just know all you're getting here is the reveal, which is your graphic, and I'm not going to post that. It doesn't really have any additional materials. So I've created a couple of ideas here for you, and you can take this whatever direction you like, but just know most of these are all dead links, so I don't know, maybe he's decided to quit doing this, but I'm glad he left this graphic because it made a really nice lesson for us. So let's go back to our assignment. So the first thing the kids are going to do is just estimate how many cheese balls. So just take a guess. Give them a little bit of time. They may have some kind of strategy that they're doing here to try to come up with a guess, but go ahead and do that here, and then when you get to the next slide, I'm going to give you a series of 3 graphics. This is like a slow reveal task, so I don't know if you've seen those before, but what happens is the first graphic gives them more information than they currently have, but not much. And then graphic 2 gives them even more, and then graphic 3 is all the information they really need to figure out the number of cheese balls. So they'll revise their answer each time they receive a graphic. Tell them change it unless you're pretty confident your answer was right. Just keep changing it each time, and then we'll see how close they are on the last answer. If they've done their work correctly, pretty much the whole class should have the same answer when they get past graphic number 3. Now the way that you give these graphics to your kids is kind of up to you. You could print them off and you could hand them out. Just like give each team one copy of the graphic and let them go. You could display it in front of the class, like if you have a television or a screen where you project things, you could do it that way. I would probably print these off, to be honest, and give them a little slip of paper with the graphic and let the teams use that slip of paper to discuss as a team how to revise these answers. Now we're going to use this activity to kind of lead into our inequalities lesson today. So the first thing they're going to do is write a compound inequality to represent the range of guesses in the class. So we'll find the student with the lowest initial guess, and we'll find the student with the highest initial guess, and then the actual hopefully is in between those two. And then they'll write a compound inequality to represent all the guesses in the class. Okay, now we're going to take it even further, do a little bit of problem solving. We'll talk about the fact that those containers of snacks do not have exactly the same number of snacks in each container, but they do have the same weight. So what we're going to do is create another compound inequality, and this time we want this inequality to have the total number of cheese balls if the actual number per serving is one more or one less than the number printed on the label. So when you see that third image, it's going to have that information, and then they'll be able to figure out the number in one container if you were to take one away or add one to that number. So that's just simple arithmetic tasks here. Haven't really gotten into inequalities too much. Now this next one is not an inequality at all. It's actually a review of a parent function. So they're going to create a table, an equation, and a graph for a function to represent how far off each guess was from the actual number. So what we need to do as a class is basically gather together all the guesses in the class. One way you could do that to make it easier for your students is to create one table and then share that out with your whole class, and then they can do the rest from there. So you would go to Desmos and you would create your table, put your data points in there for all the guesses in the class, and you could just have the kids call out their guesses if you'd like. Now in the show notes for all of these slides, I will give you sample answers, possible examples of what you might see from your students, questions you can ask your students to move them along in these tasks, and basically exactly what you should be looking for. So if you're not sure what this is supposed to look like, I will help you with that in your teacher guide. All right, now that we finished this task, this is kind of just a warm-up for the day. It should go quickly. I would say don't spend more than maybe 20 minutes on this part of the assignment. The next thing we're going to do is get into our linear inequalities lesson, which is the main topic of our assignment. So here is the Desmos activity that is connected to this assignment. It doesn't give a time here, but there are 19 screens. I would say this is probably a whole day or close to it. Take your time with this one because this is a foundational piece, and when kids don't understand what's happening here, then it kind of leads to trouble in the next lesson, which is when we put our systems of inequalities together. So take your time. Let's lay the foundation. Again, a lot of these students have had these topics in their 8th grade mathematics class. I know that we had a Foundations to Algebra 1 class for our 8th graders in my last district where I taught high school anyway, and they did cover this pretty well, so they'll know it. Some of them will. But a lot don't know it. They have a lot of ideas, but they don't really know why things are the way they are. So that's why I do these lessons even if they've had them before, so that we can make sure they know the concepts and they don't just know how to get answers or how to graph, but they know why those answers and those graphs make sense for these problems. So down here in the teacher moves, I've given you some notes. Pace to slide screens 1 and 9. There is a reveal on screen 10, so be sure you have this blocked off to screens 1 through 9 until the whole class is finished with screens 1 through 9. So I'm just going to say that there, but just be warned, if you don't do that, it's going to kind of mess up the graph. It's going to mess up the whole lesson if they're seeing screen 10. So let's keep that hidden for now. All right, they're going to answer these questions. Is the point 60 less than 12, greater than 12, equal to 12? I did include the graphing calculator. Some of these kids are going to use that to actually kind of jump ahead. If you want, you can make a copy of this task and turn that off if you would like. I tend to leave it on simply because they will always have it on state test. I know that's a dumb reason to some of you, but I just always do. So if it's a problem and you don't want that button to be there, go ahead and you could change that. Even instead of graphing, you could just make it the regular calculator too. That might be good. All right, and then they're going to answer again. Decide if the point -1 will make this true. Will it make it less than 12, greater than 12, equal to 12? So we're trying to see which of these symbols makes sense. And then they're going to do it again. So they have 4 total points. Now when they get here, if they've got the right answers on those 4 slides, these will all be checks. I'm guessing your kids are going to go through this part pretty quickly, particularly if you give them a calculator. They're not going to take a long time. If they don't get this correct, this should be correct, and this will tell you on your dashboard who's getting it and who's not. All right, now we're going to identify more solutions. We know 60 is a solution. And then when they do that, it's going to add it to the graph. They'll do it again. It'll add it to the graph. They'll do it again. And then here, it's going to have all their points. Now, if they don't have it correct, it's not going to put anything on the graph. They have to do that to see this screen. Now, they're going to do the same thing with their other points. Here's another reveal. And then all the solutions, and then they're going to graph it. It's going to graph the more formal method. Looks something like this. And then they're going to choose solid line, dashed line. So we're getting into the basically nuts and bolts of how to graph an inequality using the dashed line, the solid line, above, below, and so on. And then this one is kind of a check to see if they've learned it. So this is where you will spend a lot of your time. I would say at least 45 minutes, maybe longer. So depending on how long your class is, you may be done with day one at this point. And so now I'm going to move back to the slides. Now the next thing I've put in the slides is the GeoGebra. You may decide to switch this. It depends on, well, I guess it depends on how much time you have and where you are, but I'm going to go ahead and do this here, but you may decide to switch the GeoGebra with the 3-act task that I'm about to show you. Let's go ahead and look at the GeoGebra and see what it's like. When you get here, they're just going to practice graphing these. I kind of talk them through it here. Graph the line, decide if the line should be solid or dashed, decide if solutions are above or below, and I do give them guided questions in their notes because this should be new to them if they've just now started doing that on that activity. So I do have some notes for them, but they will go ahead and graph this one. So let's do one for practice. We know the y-intercept is 6, so let's do that. We know this goes down 7 and it goes over 4. So that line should be right. Now this should not be a solid boundary line because I'm not going to include the numbers on the line. So let's switch this to dashed. And then I'm going to go above the line because I want the y's to be greater than. And by the way, some of that's in your show notes, so you may want to talk about it. One other alternative to saying above or below is to test the point 0, 0 to see if it's true or not. If it's true, you would shade that side of the line. If it's false, you wouldn't. I encourage you to do that too, but please be sure they know they understand that the x is greater to the right and less to the left. The y is greater above and less below. And because that's an intuitive way of doing these, and it's also something they should know and they will need to know on future assignments. Now once they've got everything the way they need it, they click here, and if it's correct, the big pink correct will show, and they will take a screenshot of this entire thing and place it on their slide. And once they've done that, they're going to click the button that says generate new inequality, and there's the new inequality. Now they need to go through and do it again, and when they're ready, they click check solution. So there are 5 of these in the slide deck. It's just skill practice, which is why you may want to wait to the end. But once you've done that, you're going to do a 3-act task. Now here's another one that you could spend almost a whole class period on, depending on how you want to handle it. But this one is a full task and has a website associated with it. So let's take a look at the website. This is the site. This is Lane Walker's site, and this is her task. She's mixing Dr. Pepper with lemonade, or this student is, and what are the possibilities? What questions do you have? So this would be your Act 1 is just looking at this picture and maybe reading this statement if you want to, and then talk about possible questions that you could ask. The reason this is a good task to do at this point is because this is a real example of an inequality, because you don't have to fill the cup all the way to the brim. You could fill it halfway if you want to. Some people do that. So the amount of soda in the cup and the types of soda in the cup could be represented by 2 different variables, 2 different amounts, and a total capacity. Now the capacity of the cup you will have to decide. So that's one of the first things they're going to have to decide on. In my class, when I did this activity, and we did do it on whiteboards, I'll try to find some graphics for that if I can. But that was a long time ago, so I may not have it. But one thing I let them do is decide the size. I didn't tell them how big that cup was. But looking at the size of that person's hand, the size of those dispensers, they kind of guesstimated what the size of that cup might be. And then, so I don't know that I would tell them that. And then if you'll look at the video, I'll go ahead and play it now so you can see what that looks like. Now at this point you may want to stop the video because we are not using 3 variables, we're using 2. But that's up to you. I think they even did 4 here. Looks like another bar he's pushing there. So we'll just say there's 2 different types of sodas in here. That'll give us 2 variables in our equation. Or you could just show it to them. It doesn't matter as long as they know we're going to deal with 2 variables in our equation. So write an equation, write an inequality to relate the values x and y if x is one type of soda and y is the other. Now the way you decide to handle that is going to be up to you. I will give you a link to this site, and she does have like a paper document that you can print and give to the kids. It does have some standard practice on there. Graph this inequality. It has some questions on there. But honestly, for me, if I were doing this activity, I probably would put them on the boards. That's exactly how I had them do it in my class. I did not give them much scaffolding at all, at least initially. And then I might wait to give them that handout that has the specificity on it towards the end, after they've already played with it, maybe named their variables, drawn a picture of the cup. You know, there's all kinds of things they can do. Explain to me where the x variable would be in this cup. Where's the y variable? Where's this total amount? Where are you getting this? Anyway, that's how I would handle this 3-act task. Once it's done, they're going to take pictures of their work they did with their team. So mine usually take their Chromebooks up to the whiteboards if they're working on one of these on the whiteboards and take a picture and just insert that. And then they may come back and actually type up some text to explain more thoroughly what's going on. Like, what did you decide as a team, and how did you create this graph, and what are you seeing here, and talk about it like that. Some of the kids may go to Desmos and try to come up with a graph that way, and that'd be great too. If they want to add that to this slide, that's wonderful. The more you can get them to do without you telling them, the more they're going to know about what they're doing. So I would give them plenty of opportunity to do it on their own before you interject or guide them too much at this stage. That concludes our lesson on 2 variable inequalities. We'll continue and have another task next time with 2 variable inequalities, but then we'll start working our way into systems of 2 variable inequalities. If y'all have any questions or suggestions, be sure to let me know. Y'all have a great day.